Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning into. It's time to put an end to lousy, unstructured presentations, hosted by me, of course. It's great to have you here. I think again, like all of these kind of things, everyone, if you're new to Zoom and you haven't used Zoom before. There's a menu bar down the bottom, which you just got to kind of get a little bit of the hang of. Okay, so that's going to be where you've got a chat box in there. You'll find it. You'll find all the little bits and pieces that you need. But generally, you kind of navigate. So you can drop in a little hello in the window box if you like. I'll keep an eye out. And I've also got and roped in the lovely Lolita Lowe. So she's going to be doing some administration and some managing and all that kind of stuff from behind the scenes. I've got to say, we've had an extraordinary response to this. So nice to see all these familiar names. Bushy, Peter Wilson, how you doing? Oh my God, Jill Morris, Nikki Jerd, Ange, Claire Boyton, again, great. I don't normally do the video, so this time I decided to video up so that you could actually see that I'm actually wearing clothes when I do webinars. But 500 people signed up for this webinar. Now, these days in the world of webinars, often people, they sign up so they can listen later on. They get the recording. But it's probably been the biggest response I've had to a webinar, probably in my little history. So obviously, this is a big topic. And Sheldon Moore is just saying, Andrew, that's too much information about you wearing clothes on a webinar. I agree. Doug Perez calling in from Singapore. I think we've got people from 18 countries have registered for the webinar. So thank you very much for tuning in. But you know what, folks? Like, you know the way I operate. We've got a lot of ground to cover. It's not a sell fest. I'm not going to kind of give you 3% of the knowledge and then try and flog you something. I don't operate that way. I've got a ton of information that I really want to share with you about something that's so important for me. So let's get started. And I'll give you a few of the other housekeeping kind of details as we move through. But I want to dive right in this because it's a topic that is really important to me. Now, and I've also got my little dog Lala just under there. And she's kind of wants to play. She's decided that now is a great time to play fetch, just as the webinar starts. So it's a barking noise. That's not some strange sound emitting from my body. Righto, folks. Why do we present? Okay, why do we actually present? This is really an interesting kind of a question, not because we get paid, not because of, it's our job. I think most people who end up standing in front of a room full of people do it, because we want people to take action. We've got something worth saying, we want to share it, and we want people to take action from what it is that we're saying. So whether you're doing training, whether you're even doing facilitating, whether you're the traditional keynote speaker like I am, or all of the above, we present, we share the knowledge that we have, or we share some information, but we want the people in the room to take action, okay? That's the fundamental basis of why any of us, want to start presenting. Now, we can have the greatest information. You can have the most unbelievable stuff to share with people, but if you can't deliver it effectively, it can all amount to nothing. And I spend my life at conferences, I spend my life at presentations, all of that kind of jazz. And one of the things that I find most disappointing is the fact that so many people with great information deliver it so poorly, okay? So, that's really the crux of what it is that we're trying to say here. There are more bad presenters, out there, and there are more bad speakers out there than good ones, and I look at that and kind of say, that's the kind of stuff that we want to try and avoid. Most of the time, though, in fairness, it isn't their fault. I see people presenting on topics, they've never had any training. They've never been taught how to be a great presenter. They just don't know. And I want to say here, I was exactly the same. Like I learned early, and I'll tell you about that in a few minutes, but most people end up standing in front of a room because they're that kind of person. Someone says, oh, could you present? Could you teach this? Could you do that? No one's gone to university and got a degree, saying how to be a presenter. Most people have never, ever done even a basic speaking skills training course, which is amazing when you think about it, yet that ends up being part of your job, So it isn't your fault or isn't their fault or our fault if we don't necessarily do great presentations, okay? But it is if we don't continually get better, And that's kind of the people that I have no patience for. They've been presenting for 20 years and they're worse than ever, you know. And I was presenting in England a little while ago, and a guy got up, and I had a room of 60 people that present for a living. And an old guy got up, and I was warned ahead of time that he was probably going to be a heckler and a difficult guy. I did an opening. In 10 minutes, I told him what I do, the room, and I told him why I'm passionate about this and why I've had a lifelong commitment to being a world-class speaker. And this guy got up, and I went, oh, God, here we go. He said to me, Andrew, do you mind if I say a few words to the room? And I said, absolutely. And he said, folks, I've been presenting for longer than Andrew, okay? You know, it's like 45 years I've been a speaker. And he said, and the reality for me is that for the last 20 years, I've been ringing it in. I've been doing a half-assed job. I haven't got any better. I've got worse, and I'm ashamed. And he burst into tears, you know, and it was just like, wow, okay, you know, it's just, you know, one of those, you know, that emotional thing, which again, you know, just made me go, wow, how powerful was that? And that's why, to me, you know, like it's all about this commitment to be better as a speaker. There are many reasons why our presentations, you know, might not be as effective as they could be. You know, it can be poor stagecraft. You simply don't know how to manage an audience. Maybe no storytelling. Anyone who knows me, you know how big I am on storytelling. Lack of audience engagement, lack of research. The information they're trying to share is just out of date. It's not relevant because they haven't done enough research. They don't have any humor. I'm not saying you've got to be a stand-up comedian, but you've got to have some degree of humor. Horrible slides. If I see another terrible PowerPoint slide, I was at a conference recently where I saw 8 speakers with probably the 8 worst slide decks I've ever seen in my life. You know, now, 2018, when you could go online, do a Google search for amazing slide decks, and there's plenty of information around. But the biggest problem really is, one of the biggest problems, but the biggest problem is that most or so many presentations lack any kind of structure. So they've got all this information, it's all kind of turned into a little ball, and then they just kind of throw it out, and it bounces around all over the place. And that makes it really, really hard for the audience to take it in, to learn. If we want people to take action from the information that we're sharing, then we've got to make it easy for them, right? And structure is one of the key elements of doing that. So today, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be sharing with you a structure that I've developed that I really think can revolutionize how you present and the results you get. If you have a great structure to your presentations, people will notice, your audiences will notice, your people that pay you to present will notice, because they'll get great feedback, okay? That's what this is all about. This, to me, is one of the most important game-changing aspects of being a world-class speaker. And again, you point out what's the most common mistake. It's this: a lack of structure. So many things can be fixed up if you've got great structure. Okay, so that's the crux of what we're going to be talking about. Just briefly, a lot of you know me, a lot of you work with me, a lot of you, have done so for many, many years. I've trained many of you as speakers, going back a long time. But I just want to very briefly tell you a little bit about who I am for those of you who've got no idea. So let's go back a little bit. Okay, yes. Today, I'm a keynote speaker. I open aquariums, obviously, but I'm a speaker in the traditional sense of the word. So I travel around. I do a lot of speaking for all types of organisations, and I've been doing that for probably about 25 years. I'm an author. I've got 13 books now, sold in 65 countries, around business, personal development, personal growth, all of those kind of things there. Okay, so those who don't know, that's what I do today. But of course, I started speaking, a long time ago, and I'm getting a lot of feedback about my tie. Okay, my tie. Okay, that was a bad tie. I really like the tie, but I really started speaking, when I was 17. I was a dive instructor, and part of my job, that was the first time I'd ever stood in front of a room full of people, and I had to teach them, how to stay alive when we were diving. And I realized how important it was that I taught them well, that I communicated effectively. I taught people in wheelchairs. I taught people that were deaf. I taught groups of neuroscientists. I taught, all kinds of people from, 85-year-old people through to, 14-year-old kids. I taught a range of people how to dive, and I learnt about, how to capture an audience at a young age. I wasn't very good at it, but I knew that it would become a bit of a passion for me. And so that's then led to a more traditional sense. I taught bush survival skills. in the desert in Western Australia. You know, I had to teach groups of bikies basically how to stay alive if they got bitten by a snake or if their car broke down in the middle of the desert. I was working for Rio Tinto many moons ago. But then I went on, I started to speak in tourism to promote destinations like Cairns, you know, around the world. And I spoke and presented to audiences in Los Angeles, New York, Mexico City, England, France, Amsterdam, just, you know, Japan, China, all over the place, you know, on this kind of stuff. More recently, of course, I got into that traditional speaking role of the author being the speaker. So TEDx talks, you know, stuff there. You know, I mean, I've got hundreds of 500 odd kind of organizations that I've presented for around the world, you know, to audiences from, you know, thousands of people, you know, through to audiences of 5 or 6 people. It doesn't really matter. I just literally got back from a tour of London in May, again, where I was working for the European Union, you know, to help teach small businesses about branding for international sales, and even places like Iran. I was in Iran last year, I think it was, you know, presenting to 700 entrepreneurs. So the reason I'm trying to give you this bit of background is not to try and impress anyone. I don't really feel a need to do that, but just to let you know, I'm not just a guy who's getting up here saying, oh, I'll do it this way, rah, rah, I know everything. I'm trying to let you know, I've been speaking for decades, and I've been really committed to being the best version of a speaker that I can be, okay? So that's, you know, my passion is to try and be a world-class communicator. Now, part of what I do now, yeah, I do speaker training. I run retreats in Bali, in Australia. I do 12-month-long, like, speaking apprenticeships almost, you know, speaker training apprenticeships. I've got a community I'm just starting for world-class speakers called Speakerville, which is, again, to try and perform, you know, try and provide a platform for all of us who are speaking and presenting to be able to go and share our experiences, the stuff that we're trying to work on, the stuff that we're trying to get better. And I also go into companies and I teach everyone from the CEO down how to be better presenters. Like, I've worked with the CEO of Domino's Pizzas in Australia, you know, about, you know, becoming a better storyteller, and teams, sales teams, you know, whatever it might be, on how to present. So with all of that, the framework that I want to share with you today has been developed from over 35 years of standing in front of audiences. You know, it's a long time. It's not something that I just put together on the weekend. And it dawned on me a while ago because I was seeing so many bad, unstructured presentations that I realized we needed something better. So regardless of what you speak about, absolutely regardless of that, the information you have to share, the audience you speak in front of, it doesn't matter, or how long you speak for, whether it's 15 minutes or 4 days, this framework will work. I've worked with neuroscientists, behavioral scientists, and some of the world's greatest speakers have trained me, but also to constantly be better and to be the best version of myself as a speaker that I can be. But specifically, it's always been about how to engage an audience and make sure that I'm going to encourage them to take action for the information that I share, okay? So that's the key. So why am I sharing this information with you? You know what? Really simply, because I wish I knew it 35 years ago. I've been teaching this new framework for the last, you know, little while, and the feedback from people that have been using it has been phenomenal. And like most great frameworks, the simpler they are, the more powerful they are. Okay, so that for me is all about setting the scene on why I'm here today, why I'm sharing this information, why I don't just keep it hoarded up, because I want to put it out into the public space. So for the next 30 minutes or so, I'm going to run through the framework with you and share exactly how it works piece by piece. Then we've got time for some questions as well. I've already got a few questions that have been sent through, or you can drop questions in the chat box if you want to, and Lolita will grab those and send them through to me. And just so you know, if you've got to leave early or you know something drops out, you will get a copy of the recording of this as well. So I'll send that through to you too. So yeah, just again, so you've got that. So ideally, use the chat box for questions, please, folks. That'll make life a little bit easier for everyone. And it seems like everyone can hear and everything seems to be working pretty well. So I reckon we kind of dive into the next part. Okay, so a powerful structure for any presentation is what we're after. The first thing, let's look at this framework. Number one is we've got to have an aspirational opening. Okay, we've got to have an aspirational opening, and the easiest way to describe this is if you don't give your audience a reason to listen to what you have to say, they won't. Most speakers do lousy openings. They literally just come on, do a bit of bumble. It's nice to be here today, ruddy, and just kind of, fade into it. You've got to do a strong aspirational opening. And what I mean by that is you've got to aim high. Like, what are you going to get out of listening to this today? Just kind of like what I did, right? If you want to be a world-class speaker, this is a framework that's going to get you there. If you want more people to take action from your presentations, this framework is going to make it happen. Okay, that's the kind of thing. You have to give them an aspirational opening. So walk on stage and give them that aspirational opening. Aspirational openings can be big numbers, a big statistic. Maybe it's a story, an observation, something that makes everyone in the audience respond and that everyone in the audience will want to hear more of. And when you think about it, if you look back at some of the greatest presentations that maybe you've seen, even in workshops, smaller presentations, a great one is where the person has done this great opening that's inspired you, giving you aspirations, and you want to hear more. Okay. Now, if a speaker comes out and you don't kind of feel any inspiration, there's no aspiration, there's none of that kind of big feel, it starts kind of lukewarm. And to be honest, people start to switch off right from the beginning. Okay, you've got to understand that we've got to grab their attention, and you've got to rehearse the aspirational opening to get it right. So of all the parts of your presentations, the two parts you've got to nail are the opening and the close. If you can really rehearse them, then you're a long way in front again. So you've got to look at it and go, okay, so I've got to get my aspirational opening right. Okay. The second part that we need to do, the audience now knows, wow, I'm inspired, I can't wait to listen. Now you've got to do the credibility piece. You've got to say, who are you today? Okay? All right. So if we don't establish the reason why we're able to stand in front of these people today, excuse my typo there, they'll be less inclined to listen, and that means they'll be less likely to take action from any of the message we share. So customize it to suit the audience. So what I mean, I will turn around and I said to you guys, this is who I am today. Okay, I'm a speaker. I travel around the world. I do traditional keynotes. Blah 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 blah. I do all that kind of stuff. If I'm talking to a room full of small business owners, I'll say today, I'm an author. I'm a speaker. I help entrepreneurs all over the world to do business better. I customize it. If I'm talking to a room full of corporate people, again, I will start by saying today I train corporates in storytelling, how to do better presentations and communication, those kind of things. So this point here of who you are today, again, it needs to be relevant for the audience that's in front of you. Okay, and that can change a little bit depending on that audience. So that's number 2. Okay, number 3. Now you have to say, how did you get to where you are today? Okay, and this structure, it's important that you follow this kind of this process in order. So how did you get here today? I told you my story. I started off by teaching people how to dive at the age of 17. Okay, you go with a journey of what got you here, because this is what's going to give you credibility. We need to explain how we got to where we are today, our story. It's the second part of establishing credibility. So you're on stage, bang, I'm here in front of you because I'm this person today. Okay, the second part is, this is how I got here. So our brain now is kind of going, right, okay, I've got an aspirational opening. Wow, I've got a reason to listen to this person. 2, wow, that's what they do today. Okay, I understand it. 3, this is how they got here. So when I'm in front of a group of small business owners, I'm explaining my small business journey. I'm not telling them about my speaker journey because that's not relevant. I tell them, I bought a dive shop when I was 17, going on 18, and it was 30 kilometers from the ocean. I use my standard old joke, I was waiting for sea level to rise, that kind of concept. So, where you get a bit of a laugh. I say, I used to sleep on the floor, in the dive shop because I didn't have enough money to put petrol in the car. You got to know my bank manager because most mornings they'd come by and give me the checks that I bounced the day before. I talk a bit about my early days in business, okay? And then that is what I kind of use, to build that credibility factor, but also to show that I understand them. I always use this line. I saw a guy get up at a presentation once and to a room full of small business owners, and his opening line was, oh my God, it is so hard to park your Lamborghini in Sydney. It's ridiculous. So expensive and so hard. Now, straight away the mood in the room changed because everyone just kind of went like, really? So it was such a way to disconnect, that kind of thing. So our first part here, again, it's all about establishing credibility, okay? So we have an aspirational opening, we have me today, we have my journey, okay, or where we came from, part of the presentation. The next part is, why am I sharing this with you? Okay, so why? You've got to tell the audience why you're sharing it. Why are you standing in front of them? Why did I tell you I'm sharing this? Is because, A, I'm passionate about it, but B, because I wish I had this. I wish that I had this kind of framework back when I started presenting. So why share? We have to explain why we're here today, why we're sharing this valuable information, because the question is, if it's that valuable, why would you share it? Wouldn't you just kind of keep it to yourself? Wouldn't you just kind of hide away or do all that kind of stuff? Of course not. I'm one of those people that shares knowledge openly because that's how I get my business. People come back to me all the time saying, I love that. Can you teach me more? It's like I can teach you the framework, but I could then spend 4 days teaching you this framework. I could spend a year teaching you this framework in greater detail. But we've got to tell them why we're sharing it. And it needs to be authentic. Okay, this again is addressing, a part of our brain that wants to know, well, why are you actually doing this? And that's why it's so important. Okay, now, next part, 5, our journey. Okay, now this is a simple one. What we're trying to do here is we're trying to explain how the presentation is going to work. So we've got to tell them what to expect. So I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to share this framework with you, okay, in the parts for about 30 minutes. Then we're going to go and have a question and answer. You actually spell out what it's going to look like when you get into the meat of the actual presentation. When we explain how the presentation is going to work, our brain goes, oh, okay, I know what's coming. I don't know the details, nor should they know the details, but what I do know is that there's a structure and there's a process. And what that says then is we can relax, sit back, listen and absorb, because you know what? You got this. You're in control. I'm in the audience. You know what you're doing. You've got a structure. I'm not sitting there going, what's he going to say and how's he going to do it? It shows how professional you are. So once again, when the audience can relax, that's when they learn. And when they learn, that's when they're going to take action. That's why this is, again, a fantastic way of really kind of understanding, that audience engagement element. We want the audience to be, relaxed so we can make them uncomfortable with the knowledge that we're sharing, so we can disturb them if we need to disturb them with the knowledge that we're sharing, so we can challenge them if we need to. But if they kind of go, well, where are we going? What are we doing? Like, is it, how long, what is there? And the speakers all over the place. That's very disconcerting for the brain, okay? So we go through all the parts. So we've done the aspirational opening. We've done who we are today, and why we've got the right to stand in front of them. We've explained our journey. We've done that. I'm sharing this today with you because of this. And then number 5 is our journey today. So you, us as a group, what are we going to be doing today? Okay. So far, thank you. Lovely to see some nice little comments in there as well. I hope you're liking this. Our journey. The next part, okay, is we've got the key messages. Okay, so this is really the meat of the presentation, like what I'm doing with you now. The framework part is obviously the meat of this webinar. The intro was setting the scene, the aspiration opening, me today, our journey, why I'm sharing, and then our journey ahead. Now we're in the middle of the key messages. Okay, so this is really where you're sharing your knowledge and the whole reason that people are in the room. So this is the longest part of the presentation for most people when you're doing that. Not for me, because I'm just going to say it's a part of what we're doing. But technically, talking about the presentation is the longest part in this webinar. So delivering the information, the key knowledge, the reason that everyone is in the room. The only difference is that by the time you're ready to deliver that really meaty, the most important stuff is that they're ready to listen. You haven't just started giving them all this information up front. You've got them ready to listen. You've done the aspirational opening. You've told them, you've got your credibility established. You've said why you're sharing it authentically, and you've told them what to expect. And they are sitting there now. If you've done a great job with that, they are so ready to hear everything that you've got to say. So ready to hear everything that you've got to say that you are going to be so effective as a speaker. Just your message will get through as long as you've got great information to share, I might add. Okay, that's why this is valuable. There are many ways to structure this information part to give them the key messages. Okay, so there's lots and lots of of that in its own right, and that is probably a webinar in its own right. And believe me, if you want me to do a webinar and that kind of stuff, let us know. By all means, I'd like to do a lot more webinars around this. But now, how do we put it together? So what I do a lot of, and again, anyone who knows me, anyone who's done any work with me will know that I love frameworks, okay? So this information part of the presentation, what I do a lot of is this. Here's my framework, just as I'm doing for this actual webinar. So this is a sample of a framework, for me. So winning the battle for relevance, we're all fighting it. There's 7 steps to winning the battle for relevance here. Okay, so when you look at that side of things, that's what I follow. So I'll spend this, okay, number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. These frameworks are, again, such a powerful way to deliver information, because the brain loves structure. The brain loves to know what's coming next. The brain loves to be able to look back at the other parts. And we have to be able to deliver information in a way that's going to work for the brain. I've got so many of these. The 9 character traits of truly successful speakers. That's my 9 character traits. I could do that as a one-day presentation. I could do that as a 15-minute presentation. I could do that. It's tough in 15 minutes with that many, but I could do that. I could do a 1-hour keynote, and I have done. What I've learned in 35 years as a business owner, this is a keynote presentation I've done many times. And again, it's got 10 parts, but the information is delivered in a way that the audience knows. Another nice thing about frameworks is I can give my audience a 1-page printout of this framework, and they're able to remember it, to understand it, to be able to kind of go, wow, recall it. Frameworks are unbelievably powerful. If you can share frameworks, believe me, again, you are such a great presenter. And you'll notice that mine are all branded in my look and feel for my AGE branding, etc. And I've got, I think it's something like, I don't know, hundreds of them, 115 or something. Every time I do a presentation, I use frameworks like this. So anyone who's been in one of my presentations, you will be very familiar with that look and feel, simply because it's the best way to structure information for the brain to absorb it. And again, of course, I use a lot of storytelling, but I think we'll do that in another webinar. Okay. So, so this is, again, when we're saying that meaty part, just like we've got to structure the whole presentation, we've got to structure that key part of it. I cannot emphasize enough the value of frameworks as a presenter, and I've used them in front of every group, most nationalities, doesn't matter who it is, some not quite as visual as that, but I've still had that framework behind the scenes. Okay, the next part. So what do we do now? We've done an aspirational opening. We've told them who you are today, given that credibility factor of you today, then your journey, number 3. Number 4, why am I sharing this? Then number 5, our journey together for the next hour, 30 minutes, whatever it is, it's going to be this. Then number 6, you've given them the key messages. Okay, that's your information, the meaty part of your presentation, done in a structured way. The last thing, well, not last thing, number 7, what you've got to do now. So I finished giving you all the information. Number 7, I have to regroup. Okay, this part again is really important. Every step here is really important. Okay, it's where we make sure that all of the ducks are obviously aligned. I know it can feel repetitive because we keep repeating the framework, but what you're trying to do is teach people. You're trying to get the message across. This is how you do it. But if we don't do a sum up, so some people might do, these are the 7 steps and just go, okay, number 1 is this, number 2 is this, number 3, number 5, number 6, number 7, and then they move on to closing up. If you don't do a recollection, if you don't do the repeat and bring it all together, the brain kind of goes, oh, okay, what was number 2 again? What was number 3? I can't quite recall. So you actually go back and you run through those points, and you go, okay, what did I learn in 35? So what I've spoken to you about today is number 1, master your craft. Number 2, we've got to learn, unlearn, and relearn stuff, everything. Number 3, you've got to tell your stories. That's what's going to make you stand out. Number 4, you've got to focus on one thing, and that is your customers. Okay. Number 5, break more stuff. Number 6, change your language. What's the words that are coming out of your mouth, and how negative are they or positive are they? Number 7, we've got to be better people in business. Number 8, harden up. Number 9, stop playing small. Number 10, sow more seeds. So you go back and you've done that recap of the information that you've shared. Okay. And as Bushy said, thank you, Bushy, for saying this. Andrew, I love the way you continuously check in on where we are in the framework before going on. And that is one of the keys of doing any kind of great presentation. Keep checking in, keep going back, keep saying this. It feels repetitive to you, but I guarantee that your audience will absolutely love it. Okay? All right, so we've done our regroup. We understand that. How we regroup is really important. Take your time, spell it out, be specific, and use numbers. So when I talk about, like, let me go back to this one. Number one, okay, the first thing we spoke about was mastering your craft. Number two, learn, unlearn, and relearn. Number three, you have to actually say those numbers, because that then impregnates the brain again. You know, we know to follow numbers. We were taught from day one, as soon as we could communicate, before we could communicate, 1, 2, 3, you know, all of those kind of things started to come in. So that recapping at the end of the meaty part of your presentation is what now lets the brain go, right, I've got it all. And now the brain's also going to be asking a question, what next? Okay, what do I do now? I've got this information, so what happens now? Okay, I've got to do something with it, right? This is where, number 8, pardon me, you issue them a challenge. Now, this is one of the integral parts of this framework, okay, because you're telling them what you want them to do, okay? This changed so much for me, because I would kind of do the rehash and they go, thanks very much. So I've given them all this great information, and then they kind of sit there going, so what do I do now? You know, that was a missing link. And I say to you, how many of you guys are not telling them what to do next? Don't worry, you know, like it's really common. Most people will share the information, and then we just go, okay, thanks a lot. It's been great. I've really enjoyed being here today. You guys have been awesome. You know, it's like, and the brain is kind of going, okay, well, I've got all this information. What the hell do I do with it? What do I do now? You know, like, and that is why this is so powerful, okay? This tells the audience what action you want them to take. Now they know. There's no confusion. Their brains can breathe a sigh of relief. So issuing a challenge might be, I want you to do this. I want you to leave, and I want you to go back to your teams, and I want you to ask them 3 questions today. You know, I want you tomorrow morning, when you get up, the first thing you do when you get out of bed is do this. When you walk through your door tonight, when you put the key in the door, and try and make it really specific, really anchor it in with, you know, don't go, oh, I just want you to leave here today thinking differently about how to do presentations. What the hell? That's not specific. That's not, it's got to be direct. It's got to be specific. Challenges have to be challenges, and there has to be no doubt what that challenge is. I want you to leave here, and the first thing you do when you get in your car is this. I did a presentation for 500 mortgage brokers, and I wanted them to think differently about. I wanted a bit of an anchoring thing. And the last thing I put up was I played the Taylor Swift song, of all things. I know this is a bit obscure. And there's a video about a cop that was a bit of a setup thing. It was an American cop who was lip syncing to this song of Haters Gonna Hate. And this video, and this cop's kind of doing all these funny actions. It was huge. It's got 100 million people have seen it, and rah. It was just about, hey, don't listen to the people that are negative. Don't listen to this stuff, rah. And I got the entire room to basically download that song and that video on their phones while we're in the room. And the minute they got in the car to press play when they were driving out, and I got all these phone calls and messages and photos of like these 500 people driving out of this car parking space, all kind of lip syncing to this Taylor Swift song. But that's such an anchoring kind of tool. So if we don't do this really, really well, then it doesn't kind of work, okay? Got it? Great. Then the last part, now this is a part that we put the bow around the whole thing, is the aspirational close. Okay, so this is the one now where the brain kind of needs to know, okay, I've got a challenge. Okay, he's got to get off the stage now. He's got to shut up sooner or later. What do we do? How do I do this? Okay, this is the part that will take a good presentation and make it extraordinary. Okay, and it's another one of the parts that is generally done really, really bad. People just stop. Okay, so they don't issue a challenge. So if I issue a challenge and I don't do this next part, you know what? I've still kind of missed such an opportunity, okay? You've got to do an aspirational close, okay? Now, the key to a great aspirational close is you've got to tie the aspirational close back into the aspirational opening, okay? Close the loop. It's like a great article. If you write content and you open with a powerful line, you've got to close with a sentence that addresses that powerful opening, okay? Otherwise, it doesn't quite work, okay? Close the loop. Make it powerful. Make it strong. Deliver it really well. Just like your aspirational opening, okay, you should talk a little bit slower. Even if you're nervous, slow down your opening, be profound, be deep, be strong, own the stage. Aspirational close is bring it to an end, okay? And I hope that by getting this today, you're going to leave here and you're going to have such an amazing amount of skills, blah, 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 blah. Bang, you can do this. A strong kind of thing. So you got to talk it, so you got to rehearse it. It's got to have intent and purpose. And then when you finish the aspirational close, you stop and you go, thank you. That's it. Don't waffle on after you've, done this powerful close, okay? That's what this is all about. So we look at our structure again. Let's recap it. Number one, you want to have a really, really powerful aspirational open that you deliver. You rehearse it and rehearse it and rehearse it so you can nail it. Now, if you're also a bit of a nervous speaker, if you get the opening right, the rest will come so much easier. So rehearse the opening as much as you can, okay? Number two, you got to say, who are you today? Why have I got the right to be in front of you? Why am I the relevant guy to be standing on the stage in front of you now? So you keep that short and sweet and say, this is who I am today. Number three, this is my journey to get here today. That's your credibility. Those two together give you credibility. But we tend to do it the other way around. I started 20 years ago, got to here, now I do this. It's actually more effective if you say, today I do this, but I got here by doing this, okay? Number four, okay, why the hell am I sharing this? Why am I sharing this with you guys, okay? So this is important on this side of it as well, okay? So why am I sharing this? Number five, our journey. So during today's presentation, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share 7 key things, from here, here, and here, and this is the way that it's going to work, okay? So they know what's coming. Number 6, you give them your key messages in a structured framework, ideally. Okay, so this is all the information, bang, wow, the meat of the presentation. Okay, number 7, you do what I'm doing now. You regroup, you recap, you do a little bit of a summary about all of the points that you've just shared. Okay, number 8, you challenge them. Okay, you've got this information now. I want you to go away and you do this. And I want it to be specific. I really, really want you to do this, this, or this. Okay, so, there's so much more, around that. Then number 9, the aspirational close, okay? And tie that back in to the aspirational opening, and your presentation has a nice, neat bow around it, and the audience is left sitting there going, holy crap, that was fantastic, okay? That's the structure. Now, that's my framework for putting a presentation together. It is unbelievable. Can you guys see how effective this framework can be for planning and delivering a presentation? So think about just the planning side of things. Straight away you've got 7 kind of topics, 7 categories. 9 topics in there. I literally print out that framework, and you'll have access to that. You can print and you can write your notes around it. It's amazing how you can do that. It works for any length of presentation, from 15 minutes to a week. Okay, week long, like a 7-day workshop. So, and a few of you are obviously going, well, how do I use it for a 15-minute presentation? I was coaching a client of mine yesterday on how to do this thing in a 15-minute presentation. It works, it works, it works, it works. Obviously, you've just got to keep parts shorter, but you just still don't give up any of the parts. Okay, you still got to turn around and actually make sure that you follow the particular steps. It just means that they're shorter. Still, if you've got a 10-minute prezzo, you've got to do a kick-ass opening and a kick-ass close that's aspirational. You still got to say why you're there. You still got to turn around and do all of those parts that again, make it work. 10 minutes, 10 days, okay? If I'm doing a 4-day retreat, what I do is I dive deeper on this stuff over 4 days. This is what it's all about. If you use this framework, you're going to be amazed by the feedback you get and by the fact that people are going to rate your presentation unbelievably well. Now, I know that's not the only reason at all, but if you make a living as a speaker, believe me, the feedback is what's going to get you the next job. Okay, so you've got to have people saying, hey, that was awesome. Otherwise, you might have, again, great information, and I see this all the time, great information delivered badly. those speakers don't get invited back. They don't get asked back because the audience doesn't enjoy it. The audience can't take it in, can't understand it, etc. You know, so there's so much in here. Yes, of course, you need to develop your speaker skills. You've got to rehearse. You've got to tell stories. You've got to have great visual presentations. You've got to develop stagecraft. But in a world of badly structured presentations, you will be miles in front of most presenters simply by having and following this framework. Okay? You know what I mean? So, you know, it doesn't matter. Again, I followed this in the webinar, and I'll explain that in a second. But most importantly, this whole thing, you'll be so much closer to being a world-class speaker, this powerful presenter, and you will be able to capture and hold any audience because their brain gets it. They know the structure. They love it. That's what it's all about. And of course, if you're trying to sell a product or a service, if you're a speaker in a company and you're trying to, climb up the corporate ladder and do all that stuff, the more effective you are as a speaker, believe me, the more of everything you're going to get. If you want more customers, learn to be an amazing speaker and you'll have more customers that you can poke a stick at, okay? So, Bushy Martin said to me, so where's the challenge then, Andrew? Well, of course, I do have a challenge. I've got 2 challenges for you guys. The first one is take some time when this webinar finishes and look at your last presentation and imagine how much better it could have been if you followed the framework that I've just shared with you, okay? Look at that. Think about that. Take some time right now to look at the very last preso that you did and say, how was the structure? How was it? What would it have looked like if I'd followed Andrew's framework? And the second challenge, next time you'll sit down to start planning your next presentation, get this framework out, okay? I'll make sure you've got a PDF that you can download and develop the presentation using it. See how much easier it is to develop a great presentation and how good it feels to have such a solid structure. And it would be extraordinary, okay? Extraordinary in so many different ways. So that's the challenge I have for you. This, for me, is a framework that, if more speakers use it, and I see it now when I see speakers that I've trained using it, and again, I see it in them, the confidence that they have, the feedback that they get from their audiences, all that kind of stuff is extraordinary, okay? So it's going to work. All right. So that's this thing. If you want to become this world-class speaker and you really want to have a huge impact on those audiences, you want to change the world, whatever it might be, this is what's going to be. Even writing your summation about what you're going to write about, this is all that kind of stuff that's going to cover. Okay, now, a couple of things that I want to do. Use the framework, print it out. You'll get a recording. I'll make sure you got that PDF. Before that, look, I'd love your feedback on this webinar. We're going to go to Q&A in a second. If you'd like more webinars like this, all you got to do is tell me. Just email it out, okay? You can email it, contact me on Facebook, whatever you like. All that kind of stuff works. Yep, I'm going to be sending out a recording, and I'm also going to tell you more about how I can help you to become a world-class speaker. I'm not big on selling, hardcore selling. I'm not doing that in the slightest here. I want to give you information, and I want to get to question and answers as soon as I can. But I just want to show you a couple of quick things. I've got a 4-day speaker retreat coming up in Inverloch, Victoria in November. It's only 15 spots. It's going to be fantastic. I've run this retreat so many times in Bali. If you want to find out more, just go to my website. I've got another one coming up in Bali in May. Okay, so again, go to my website. I do an amazing 12-month program called Speaker Inc. I've just finished. I've got another one coming up. The intake is this month, September, and it kicks off in October. I'll let you know about that. And something that I'm really excited about, I'm putting a private Facebook group together for Speakerville. It's going to be called. It's going to be a community for world-class speakers to be able to come along and actually, share information, ask for advice. It'll be closed, a private group. I'll send out invitations as well to everyone. If you want to join it, great. There's no cost. It's not a hard sell spot or any of that kind of stuff. It's about having a community of other people who present and speak for a living. So that's what that is kind of coming up in there. And of course, workshops, a new book on building your speaker business coming out next year, and so much more. Okay, so that's the sell part. Really, if you want to find anything else about what I do, you guys know where it's going, but I'll email you and let you know. But what I want to do now is I want to go into some questions. Now, a few questions kind of came. Now, these are random questions. If you've got questions about the framework, great. If you've got some feedback about the framework that I've just shared with you, I would love that as well. So, I hope you've got great value out of it. Please, if you can, stay and listen, to to the questions because they may be of value to you, because there are all kinds of general questions about speaking, not just about frameworks. And also the other thing I'd like to say before I get into those is, look, you might have looked at today and said, you know what, I'm actually doing 3 or 4 of the things in this framework. Maybe if I did the other 5, it could be so much better. Or you might be doing all of them, you know, but maybe in a different order. So, you know, don't beat yourself up. Just say, well, what could I do to make it better? That's really the key, right? That's why we're here, you know. So awesome. So okay, let's do a bit of Q&A. I got a question here from Sam Buckby. So how do you ensure rather than assume the topic and the content is perfect for the majority of the audience? So Sam, one of the big things here is the fact that you have to do your homework on the audience that you're in front of. And this is the thing that lets so many speakers down. You got to know who's in front of you. You got to do some research, you know, and that's everything from going online to asking better questions to making sure that you're talking to people. If I get a job for a franchise group to come and speak to them at a conference, I reach out and ring randomly owners of the franchise to ask them, tell me, I've been told this by head office, tell me your side of things. Tell me what your challenges are. Tell me what some of the issues are that you're struggling with, etc. You know, so, you know, look at that kind of thing. So what it really means, Sam, is you've got to do your homework on your audience before you're there. That way you'll know that you've got it right, rather than kind of presenting blind and hoping that you're actually delivering the right message, which is, to be honest, pretty freaking scary, to be honest. You know, so do that. Kate Christie asked, what's the best framework to follow when you only have a 20-minute speaking slot? I think I just shared that with you. Great. I think I've just shared that with you, Kate Christie, exactly what I've just shown you. Okay. Paul Smith. Paul, you've asked there, how are you, mate? Conferences often ask for a copy of slides, but my presentations are more visual impact rather than old school. So, you know, full of text. I often advise them to record the presentation and we can send a link. If they can't do that, would you advise a 2-pager with the key points or 2 versions of the deck? To be honest, Paul, exactly as you've made a comment for before, I send them, they can either have a copy of my presentation or I just give them a copy of the framework that I've actually just shared with them. You know, so I look at that and kind of say, you know, this is the way that it kind of works, you know. So this is a simple printout. You know, it's really easy. Thank you for that feedback. Okay, now a couple of others that the lovely Lolita Lowe has emailed through. So I won't bring these up, but I'll talk them out. Mark Matthews. G'day, Mark. How are you, mate? Storytelling versus story showing. Can you please comment on this? Is it something different or is it a bit of a marketing angle? To be honest, mate, look, I think that we all kind of get a bit caught up in, you know, on technicalities. My bottom line is the more stories you can tell, or story showing is really, you know, using an example of how you've achieved something by sharing your story. They're kind of the same thing. It's like anecdotes. It's like all the rest of it. If you're talking about experiences, things that you've seen, things that you've heard, things that you've observed, whatever it might be, that's what we want to be doing. My presentations in the last 20 years, the one thing that's changed the most is that I have less and less data and more storytelling. It is so unbelievably powerful that, again, add great storytelling to great structure, you know, that we've just done here, and you will have, you know, such a great presentation. I use the word great a lot in there, but you get the point. Bill Owens. G'day, Bill. How are you, mate? In a 20-minute presentation, how long for steps 1 to 5? So let me bring up the framework again, just so you can keep that in the background. Steps 1 to 5 in 20 minutes are probably about 3 or 4 minutes, Bill, because the majority of that presentation really then needs to be in the key messages. You know, so you want that to probably be, you know, at least 10 to 12 minutes. So probably 4 minutes or so for the opening and 4 minutes for the close. You know, so it's tough on that 20 minutes, but that's the kind of thing that you can do. Louisa Lucas, when do we sell them something? To be honest, you know, like I'm not really necessarily that big on doing big sells. I tend to do subtle selling. You know, for me, subtle selling is saying exactly what I did today. Hey, look, I train corporates. I run retreats. I do this kind of stuff because I hate sitting in on a webinar, for example, and it's 45 minutes of what you're going to get and then 3 minutes of kind of half getting it. And really, it's just one long sell, but we don't give you any information. For me, you know, I find that really, really frustrating. I think if I do a great job and I really convince you of the information that I'm sharing here and you see that I'm delivered great value, that's the best way that I can sell to you. That's my philosophy, and it always has been, on that side of it. And I tell you what, I think as people, we are less and less tolerant of the hard sell from stage, hard sell from webinar, etc. I mean, I think I got 500 people registered for this webinar because they know that I'm not going to do a hard sell, more than anything else. So from that point of view, that's what works for me. So seeding is probably a good term, Tara, for that side of things there. When should we invite them to work with us, buy something? Again, exactly what I said there, I guess, Tara. I think that if you've done a great job, they will want to do that anyway. And you can do follow-up with your emails, follow up with it. You've got to build connection and community. You've got to give away information. You've got to give value, I mean, I built a business on this in 25 countries around the world, and I've done so much of stuff by not being a hard sales guy. And that's how I like it. You know what I mean? That's how I like to deliver on all this kind of stuff. And I just think it's a better way to go. I'm not trying to be negative about anyone, but I'm so over the hard sell from stage and not delivering any quality content. Kenneth, can you give me some tips for a groom's father speech at a wedding? How would you do an aspirational opening? Okay, well, that's a funny one, but thank you, Kenneth. Again, don't be drunk. It's the first thing I would say. So don't drink anything. I was MC at an Irish wedding 2 years ago. Oh my God, 300 crazy drunk Irish people. It was awesome. But again, aspirational, talk about love, get your father to talk about his own experience, the aspiring of what their life together is going to be, so that heartfelt, aspirational opening come from the heart. Okay. Peter Wilson, how many slides, AG? What's the ideal number? I do heaps of research debriefs, which can be quite data or content heavy. That's a great question, Peter. And thank you so much, guys, for all these lovely questions. I've got 90 slides in here for, and we're 50 minutes into this presentation. So I use a lot of slides. I don't know if you felt there were too many or if you felt that it was distracting. I always do a lot of slides, but I do very simple slides, as you can tell. I think when you do a lot of research debriefs, I think you need to have more slides. You have to have less information per slide though, Peter. So there isn't a specific number. What I find problematic is content-heavy slides are generally, when someone just puts a whole Excel spreadsheet on or a whole pile of words, it's generally a bit of a lazy way to present, okay? I think there's a better way to present, and that you pull out what that key information is, okay? And that's what you share per slide. You don't pay any more for extra slides, so put one key piece of information on per slide. It's a whole other topic, but it's a great topic. Julianne, hey Julianne, darling, hope life's good for you in Bali. Do you have a number of keynote presentations you deliver, or are you creating new ones all the time? Julianne, every year I create, more every year I create more keynotes. So I generally have about 8 or 9, presentations at any one time, and I update them. So some are old favorites, so I keep them going, but I come up with new presentations on a bit of a regular basis. Okay, so that's how I kind of work. You have your old favorites, like the Rolling Stones. You got to have those that are regulars. Tara, are there parallels between the speaker structure and the book structure? There kind of are. I think, to be honest, that's a really great question too, Tara. I think that there are. I think again, if you don't set the scene right in the book, no one's going to read it. If you don't have a strong call to action at the end or challenging them and have an aspirational close, it can be lost. And the rest does fit in there. So I think, yes, absolutely. I think it's a really cool thought. Mark Ostrom, g'day, mate. How are you? How would you structure a more technical presentation when you have to cover a body of learning? Sure. I have to present. So where can you find Asian business intelligence online? I'm not sure if that's the same question or not. It's the same kind of concept, and I understand. Look, I work with engineers. I work with some architects, scientists, marine scientists, different people, and they always say I've got to deliver a technical presentation. The real key should be, in my opinion, mate, is that the real detail of a technical presentation should be in the handouts. Okay, the rest of the information, the key facts and figures should go in the slide deck. Okay, the reason being is, what happens if the data projector blows up? And it happens. The slide deck is there to support you and to make you look good. It's not the answer for everything. So if there's a whole pile of detail, put it in the handout, put it in the notes, and refer to that. Particularly for technical stuff. Otherwise, it's just this really kind of dull, dry presentation with a whole pile of data that generally half the room can't read anyway because they're too far away. Genevieve D, hi Andrew, any tips on how to deal with nerves before a presentation starts? to make sure you really sell the aspirational opening. Genevieve, great question. Again, thank you. A lot of things. If you rehearse, if you have the more rehearsed, practiced, organized, structured you are, the less nervous you will be. Simple as that as a presenter. Rehearse your presentations. Straight away, that will make it so much easier for you. However, I'm nervous until I get my first laugh. Once I get my first laugh, I relax. Okay, so for me, it's really, I spend a lot of time rehearsing my openings and rehearsing my closing. Do that. The other part is being organized, making sure don't drink too much coffee if you're a bit of a nervous speaker. Don't get there last minute. Get there nice and early. Meet people before you present. Find a friend in the audience. This is an old tip that speakers use all the time. Find a friend. When you're milling around having a cup of tea before you go on stage, find someone in the audience, find a couple of people. And then when you get on stage, make reference to them. Oh, this morning I got here early, I was having a cup of tea with Mary. She said that this is a big problem for her. Straight away the audience goes, wow, how great are you? You're a part of us. And if you look at Mary, she'll be nodding her head furiously now because she's on your sales team. She's a part of your organization. She's got to kind of, do what it is that you're doing. You've enlisted the aid. So I wander around and talk to quite a few people. Now I've got all these little seated sales reps in the audience who have to kind of be nice to me. So, so look at that as a bit of a plan as well. But rehearsal, seriously. Julianne Black, can you do a webinar on the business of speaking? Sure, Julianne, I'd love to do one on that. Mark Peters, hello, Mark Peters. In respect to, is that solicitor Mark Peters from Cairns? Mate, I haven't spoken to you for ages. In respect to my journey stage, can you talk about getting the balance right between self-promoting, highlighting career achievements, and also demonstrating humility? Gee, that's a really, really nice question as well. I guess there's always a risk that too much self-promotion could paint a presenter as a bit of a wanker. Nice kind of point. Mark, look, you're right. You've got to turn around and say, is what I'm sharing relevant? But again, address the elephant in the room. Did you notice what I said early on? When I was telling you my journey, I said, I am not saying any of this to try and, go, aren't I awesome? I'm trying to give you some background and reference so you understand where I'm coming from. This is the point. This is why, I think this is so powerful in that side of it. It's to give credibility and to be able to say that, to show the credibility that got you to where you are today, okay? You're right. If you get up there and say, oh, I've got a Maserati, I do this, I'm awesome, rah, rah, it can be taken wrong. The key is it varies a little bit in different audiences. Australians, we're a cynical bunch, so there's got to be a reference, that they go, yeah, this guy's impressive or this lady's impressive, but you don't go overboard. In America, you get a standing ovation for turning up. Thanks, Americans listening in. Okay, so you got to tell them all of this stuff because they want to know they're a much more veteran kind of conference and event kind of country. They've heard it all before. If you don't give them enough reason to listen to you and you show your credibility, they'll tune out really easy. Okay, so you're right. You got to balance it out, Mark. But if you don't do it because you think people are going to think you're a bit of a dick or all that kind of stuff, then you're not going to have the credibility with the audience. Okay. Unless, of course, you're someone unbelievable like Richard Branson. He's already got the credibility. I'm talking about us mere mortals. Ange, you've asked, is this an elevator pitch framework? To a degree, it is absolutely a shorter version of it. Robin James, hi Robin. I tend not to number presentation segments. Any other suggestion? Number them. Make it easy for the brain to absorb them. Okay. Yes, it's much more effective to use numbers and restate names of segments. Do both. I think, Robin, is what I would suggest. Remember, we've got to do everything we can to make it easy for the brain to absorb the information that we're sharing because we want people to take action. If they take action, then we've achieved our result. Gary Mason, could you use this framework for a great sales meeting by leaving out number 2 and 3? Absolutely you can. And you're right. You can't do 2 and 3 every time you're sitting in on the sales meeting, can you, Gary? They'd go, God almighty, this guy's a lunatic. But absolutely. And you definitely want to end the sales meeting with a challenge and an aspirational close. Without a doubt. That's the great thing about this framework is you can actually use it in every situation for a webinar, for everything, whatever you look at. Great question. Thank you so much, guys. I love this. Andrew Turlick, should you avoid taking questions during the presentation and save them for the end like you've done there? To be honest, Andrew, I do. And the reason that I do is you go down, look at the questions here, at the variety of questions. It would be really distracting for everyone if I took questions all the way through, because people don't ask questions in sync with what's actually coming up on the board. They ask questions in, with questions popped up in their mind. Like if I stopped the presentation and started talking about, wedding speeches, it would not be that relevant to 95%, probably 99% of the people on the line. You know what I mean? So I tend to leave them to the end and have a nice energetic Q&A at the end. Definitely when I'm presenting on a stage, do the Q&A at the end. You get derailed, and you know what? Your presentation gets de-energized. Someone asks a hard question, people get distracted, you lose them. Those who don't want to listen to the Q&A, they've already signed off, but you let them, sign off and all that kind of jazz as well. The lovely Fran Connolly. Hello, Fran. Andrew, fantastic presentation today. Thank you. My question is, what's your opinion on showing video in a presentation? I've seen so many speakers fall apart when technology fails, regardless of how often you check it. Yeah, it doesn't matter how often you check it, it always falls apart. One of the elements of that, Fran, is I think we need to use video more and more because it does make our presentations so much more engaging. But I never rely on an internet connection. The one thing every event venue in the world has in common is crappy internet. Anyone who relies on actual real-time internet to be delivering video and stuff like that, you're asking for trouble. So I download videos, and I only ever play videos that are downloaded and on my computer or in the presentation itself. But again, you've got to use videos well. You've got to frame them. You've got to make sure you're telling people why you're using the video, what is, and then sum it up at the end. Don't just press play and not have any reference to the video. So particularly though these days, videos are more effective. There's more of them. There's more use. They're great to use. Longer trips, like Fran, you've sat in on my my retreats. You know what it's like. If I talked at you for 4 days without showing you the odd video, you'd want to jump out the window, I think, after that. So so that's a kind of a helpful little tip. Peter Wilson, presenting to an audience who don't have English as a first language, your thoughts? Okay, depends again whether or not there's a translator. I've done many presentations to non-English speaking audiences. The key is a few things. One, do your homework and do some cultural work. Like when I spoke in Iran, one of the most important things that we had was a lot of cultural training ahead of time. And I was not allowed, there were things I couldn't do on stage. I wasn't allowed to swear on stage. I wasn't allowed to dance on stage, and I wasn't allowed to be naked on stage. So that really kind of cramped my style, all three of those particular things. But in all seriousness, you've got to understand the cultures. Like I had a few slides that I had to submit beforehand that got rejected because there was too much arm showing for a lady. You know what I mean? So cultural awareness is important. The second thing is if there's a translator, which you would assume that there is, you still got to slow it down a bit because the poor bugger's got to translate you. If there's no translator in the audience, you hope that they're going to, they speak enough English to get by. Again, you've got to slow it down. So if you normally do a presentation that takes an hour, allow it to be 45 minutes. Slow it down that much. Okay, nothing worse than a speaker speaking too fast, particularly when it's an audience that has non-English as their main language. Keep your slides, simple again, and avoid jargon, all that kind of stuff. But really the best advice is exactly what you said in there, mate, is slowing it down, and just be aware of the cultural kind of conditions. Nikki Jerd, hey Nikki, how you doing, darling? Another Cairnsite. How much time do you generally allow for the key messages and all the other bits, like 80% key messages, etc.? It's a really kind of nice question in there, Nikki. I think, again, if I kind of look through that, probably about, I would say probably about 15% of the time it allocated is on the 15 to 20% is on getting up to the key messages, 15 to 20 on the regroup, challenge them, aspirational close, maybe closer to 15 for that, and then the balance on the key messaging. Obviously, the key messaging is the meaty part of the prezzo. That's the main part that we want. And from Joshua Scott, God, I can't believe how awesome these questions are. You guys, you got to come on some of my retreats. We cover all of this stuff. It's fantastic. Do you have any tips on the best way to rehearse? Bathrooms, car, mirror, recording on your phone, your kids. I normally practice and rehearse in front of my dog, and she just sits there obediently if I've got treats and other things to bribe her. But realistically, what I normally do, the way I do, like I have this format that I've got on the screen and I kind of write notes on that. I start talking it through. Okay, aspirational. So I'm going to do this. Bang, bang. I start a general, I kind of rehearse it in bits. Okay, rather than one whole chunk. Okay, I'm going to rehearse the opening. Now I'm going to rehearse the end. Oh, I'm going to rehearse the challenge them. I'm going to, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. So I kind of work my way through it in parts, and then I start to run it through. I definitely record it from a sound point of view, but then I do just use my phone and I record that, set up on a tripod and record it. And I've done a lot of that. When I did my TEDx talk, I think I rehearsed that maybe 30 times. Something ridiculous like that. And I tell you what, it was a whole lot better because of that. It's really, really good to do that. And I have people say to me all the time, oh, I don't rehearse. I'm better when I'm not rehearsed. You know what? It's bullshit. They think they're better, but they ramble. They go all over the place. It lacks structure. I've heard that from 1,000 speakers going, oh, yeah, I never rehearse. I'm better. And you go, and I just saw their presentation. And I go, really? Okay. It's terrible. So the people who, and I put up with it all the time when people say it to me, I'm a pro, I'm a world-class speaker because of what I do to prepare, the effort I put into it, the seriousness that I take, and I'm not ashamed to say that because I treat it so seriously. Anyone who knows me knows the amount of work I put into presentations and the hours, talk 10,000 hours, my God, not even close to the amount of time, effort and energy I've put into being a speaker. And that's why I get to travel around the world. That's why I get to work for amazing companies. That's why I get to do that stuff because, I treat it as a serious profession. Okay, there's a few more questions in here. Jeff Green and a few comments in the question box. Hey, Jeff. AG, it's been a while. What a wonderful way to start the day. Great webinar. Good on you. Thank you, mate. John Broadbent. Hello, John. How are you, mate? Guy Kawasaki said the font size should be half the age of the oldest person in the room. Nothing worse than detailed text that can't be read. Oh, my God, that's such a great point, mate. I so agree. Annie Clark, thank you for those beautiful photos that you sent Lolita and I. Annie, by the way, Annie came to our last retreat in Bali and just took some great photos, such a sweetheart. Using the aspirational open and close has revolutionized my presentations. Already, I think more about how my audience will perceive what I'm saying or presenting. Thank you. You are so welcome, Annie, and thank you for everything. Hey, look, guys, I guess that's about it. Time to wrap up. I hopefully, tune back in and listen to the recording. If you're doing a lot more around, presenting and you want to get better, it is a huge topic. Look, I've spent nearly a lifetime, mastering it, and believe me, I've got so much more to learn. I'm just getting started in this space after 35 years. But if you do the work and you really, if you're driven to be a world-class speaker, if you're driven to be someone who wants to change the world by having amazing impact, if you just want to climb and have better job offerings, if you just want to, be able to stand in front of a room full of people and not be kind of nervous before you do it. You know what I mean? So, that to me, this is what it's all about. It's a commitment. And I really, I implore you to do it because I don't know, the experiences that I've had as a speaker, I get teary even thinking about it. Talk about changing your life. The emails that I've got, look, Nikki McMillan, you just put a comment in there. Thanks, Andrew. Your presentation at Albury last year was one of the best that I've attended. That kind of stuff there, the chance to have this unbelievable impact on people everywhere, no matter what I'm talking about. I spoke to 500 lawyers last year on the Gold Coast, and I talked about, how to stay sane when it feels like the world is going crazy. These are people who are incredible, dealing with family law issues that would break your heart. You know what I mean? And I got a chance to maybe help them in some little way. This is what it's all about. It is not about making money. Believe me, it's not about trying to be the most highly paid speaker in the room. That happens, but it takes this incredible commitment, to do it. But the rewards are unbelievable. All right, folks, thank you for those lovely comments. Just so you know, right, in the chat box in Zoom, when we finish the webinar, I get a copy of all of that is emailed through to me from Zoom, or I can download it. And I can read back through all the comments afterwards, and I really enjoy that part of the process. Just to see, what people are saying and anything else that I might have been lost. So please don't think that if you if you've written a comment, it's lost in there as well. And it's so nice to see so many great, great, reconnections. Sarah Powell, the lovely and beautiful Sarah Powell from the middle of Adelaide, and about, not dancing naked. I think you're suggesting there, Sarah, that's good. I've actually adopted that principle for all of my presentations from now on. So whatever happened before then, I can't be held accountable for. And I love your feedback in there. Quick last question from the lovely Claire Voighton. How are you, Claire? Got to come down to Swan Bay Farm. Recommend an ideal presentation time for a young audience. The younger the audience, the shorter the presentation time is probably my advice, darling. Kids these days don't want to listen to some old fart talking on for an hour. That's me, not you. So keep it short. You're better to have a punchy, short presentation than a long-winded, painful one, to be brutally honest. It's probably a messier. No one ever complains about a presentation going short. Everyone complains when they go too long. And I've gone too long, so feel free to complain. I hope that I've energized you folks. I hope I've given you a bit of that zing. I'd love you to tune into more webinars. I'd love you to share what I do. I'll send out the link to this recording. If you want to share it with anyone, great. I mean, I'm so, passionate and driven by trying to do this stuff, help people, it's share it far, share it wide. Thank you for those of you who are great supporters and promoters of me. That's what my business is, and I never take any of you for granted for 1 second. I know that all of my business comes from word of mouth, and it comes because I do stuff like this. And I know that a lot of you I've mentored. A lot of people have said that I'm a role model. Believe me, it's not something that I take lightly either. It's something that means a great deal to me. And I'll continue to do it for as long as you'll let me. All right, folks, have an awesome day. Remember, you got 2 things to do. Okay, look back on your last presentation and see how could this framework have made it better. And when you're sitting down and planning your next presentation, okay, then I want you to actually use this framework and see how much better it could possibly be. All right, have a great day, great week, and I'll see all of you somewhere really, really soon. Thanks so much, folks. Bye-bye.